Welcome back to r/Neighbors from Hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled "Neighbor Bulldozed My Home After Repeatedly Trespassing on My Property." My name is Tyler and I bought a house next to an old psychopathic drunk, and here is my survival story. You guys probably will think that I am making this up, but seriously, that man was insane and wildly drunk most of the time. Anyway, this story starts with me buying a home of my uncle, kind of out in the forest, I guess you could say. We live in Colorado and the home has a nice view of the mountains and it is not close to a lot of neighbors. It was not really a nice house, but I wasn't living there full time because I was fixing it up and still had a few months left on my apartment lease. The place had a lot of issues, but Uncle Russ gave it to me on the cheap and that was a nice incentive. I was thinking maybe if I liked it enough I would live in it, or I would sell it for a decent price after putting some time and money into it. That was until I met this crazy neighbor. His name was Jerry and he was probably only 5.5 feet tall, portly and maybe in his late 60s. He never took off this torn up hat with the Chevy logo on it. He also had several hound dogs that he kept in outdoor runs all year round. I know that he had some heated barns for them to use in the winter though, thankfully. They barked constantly, just loud obnoxious baying all day long or any time that they see something in the woods. Oh and yeah, he made sure he educated me on how a bay is the specific type of bark that a hound dog like a beagle or a bloodhound makes when I went over and complained finally. Jerry started leaving piles of his dog's poop in my yard one day after I complained again about their constant barking. I might have told him that I could call the police for a noise complaint after a certain time of the evening. That didn't go too well though. He cussed at me, something about how I didn't have respect for a hunting man's dogs and their nature. I don't think it warranted his particular choice of action. I mean, it was a lot of poop, guys. Like maybe a wheelbarrow full just dumped right in the gravel driveway. He also did not appreciate me in general. He blatantly told me that my uncle was an a-hole for selling the property to me and not him. I guess he even called my uncle and gave him a piece of his mind for it. Russ just told me to ignore him and that he would leave me alone one day. I tried to do just that and it worked for a week or two. I started cleaning the property once the weather warmed up some more, cutting down brush that was covering a large portion of the back half of the yard. There was a large barn for equipment that my uncle used to have, and the trees and other foliage had gotten super out of control behind it. As I went and started tearing away a bunch of weeds and other stuff, I found old engines and pieces of cars and boats and other machinery that was hidden by everything else. Some old wire fencing and over a dozen tires that had brush and small trees growing through the middle of them. From the looks of it, the stuff had been there for a long time. It would take me forever to get through this and I would need some help too. So I called my uncle, assuming that he would know something about the mess. I was thinking that I wished he had told me about all of it instead of just letting me stumble onto it by surprise. Russ said that he didn't know what I was talking about. He did say that one thing might be his from years ago, but for the most part he was unsure. I decided to go back and look at the stuff again, and I realized that there were several car parts that seemed familiar. Several Chevy tailgates and a hood with the emblem on it were found as I went deeper into the mess. I feel like I owed Jerry a visit over this, even though I know that it means he will probably spit in my face when I do. Jerry's house was probably about 100 yards away from mine. There wasn't another neighbor for over 2 miles in either direction, just me, Jerry and the mountains. Well, probably some moose and bears as well. All of his stupid dogs are barking at me on my walk up to the house, so I knock a little loudly apparently. I cannot hear anything over their noise, so I didn't realize that it was loud. Jerry yanks the door open, his face twisted in an angry frown.
"What?"
he shouts at me.
"Why are you banging on my door like that? You the cops, huh?"
The stink of booze on his breath. "Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry. I wasn't trying to bang on the door. I thought I was knocking, but the dogs..." I was cut off by him puffing his chest and stepping out the doorway towards me onto his cluttered front porch.
"What about my damn dogs?"
His voice cracks as it goes up an octave and his face flushes red with anger. He reached out and poked my chest.
"I am so sick of you bringing up my hounds."
He is on his tiptoes as I am almost 6'3", trying to get into my face. I step back and put my hands up, wanting to show that I'm not there for a fight. I would get crucified in court for beating up an old man, and I know that he is looking to push me into doing something stupid, so he can probably sue me and take the house. "Hey, don't touch me, man. I'm not here to talk about the damn dogs." He steps down ever so slightly until I bring up why I am really there. It became pretty obvious once I started mentioning that I was cleaning up the brush behind the barn. Before I even said what I found, he started saying that he didn't leave anything back there.
"You accusing me of dumping trash on your uncle's property?"
His face flushes again, a weird look in his bloodshot eyes.
"Oh, you wait. You think you're going to accuse me of something, boy?"
"Look, Jerry, I'm just saying that a lot of the stuff I could match up with some of the junk cars you have kept over on the side of your garage. Russ says that he didn't have anything like that back there, and we don't have any other neighbors for miles. Who else could it be then?" Jerry continued to make scoffing noises and wouldn't look me in the eye for a moment.
"I didn't dump anything, damn it,"
he insists several times. After a moment of silence, he suddenly becomes very serious.
"I told you I didn't do it, and if you come back onto my property, I will shoot you."
I stared at him, I suppose in surprise. I didn't expect him to threaten to shoot me, and he continued,
"This is your first warning, so I will give you to the count of 10 to leave before I get my gun."
I decide to heed his warning and leave. This guy is crazy. How is he going to threaten my life over this type of thing? How has Russ not had any issues with him before? From there on, it was trouble with Jerry. He started doing weird stuff like leaving dead birds in my mailbox, and the dogs seemed to be barking more than normal during the nighttime as well. There was a rusted out back end of a truck blocking the entrance to my driveway as well. More wheelbarrows full of poop, and my trash cans seemed to be filled with bags that were not mine. I think that the worst had to be when he put a deer head on my back porch. And by the way guys, there were a few more things that Jerry did in this story, however I felt it was a little bit too much for YouTube. Anyway, this went on for about a month, which I just now started living in the house full time. I had done several decent renovations and was working on finishing the kitchen. I was sick of trying to clean up all the heavy machinery behind the barn, so I hired a company to do it, which cost me a pretty penny in labor and disposal of all the tires and old cars and boat parts. I put the bill in Jerry's mailbox with a letter asking him to pay a certain portion of it. And yes, I am poking the bear, but oh well, what else could he do to me? Nothing happened immediately. I will admit I expected something. I had installed some cameras around the property after the deer head incident. I plan on taking him to court at some point for all of his crazy BS. It was almost a week later and I was in bed. The house is a ranch and has the bedrooms on one side and the kitchen and living room on the other. I was woken up by one of the loudest and most startling sounds I've ever heard. Not to mention the shaking. I thought that there was an earthquake upon first waking up. Then I realized it was not that. I ran out and saw a large piece of machinery like a giant backhoe just tearing through the north side of my kitchen. It had destroyed one wall already and it was working on tearing down more. It was so dark and hard to see the operator, but I know who it was. That dude Jerry. I called the police immediately. My instinct was to just leave the house and probably hide until the cops get there, but instead I go back to the destruction in my kitchen and see that the backhoe is heading in the direction of Jerry's house. I guess he was finished with my house for now. That was enough revenge for one night, huh? The police arrived shortly after Jerry left. Both of the first two cops were in complete shock as well. They had never seen someone bulldoze a part of their neighbor's house. A report was taken and they specifically noted the trail where the backhoe had come and gone, leading right to Jerry's garage. I stayed in a hotel for the rest of the night. It didn't take long for Jerry to get what he deserved for destroying my property. He was arrested for several different counts like criminal trespassing, property damage and endangerment. Because of his age and veteran status, he was let off a little easily. He had to pay me back for everything, of course, which totaled up to a lot of money. Over $200,000 in damages plus more. He didn't have to stay in jail for too long, but he never came back to the house. He had to sell the property to pay for all the damages done to mine, and I'm not really sure where he is at now. I know he was a pain in the butt, but I never would have expected him to bulldoze a part of my house. I feel sort of bad for sending an old man to jail, but I did manage to do some awesome renovations to the house afterwards. I enjoy my beautiful view of the mountains from my nice new bay window in the kitchen every morning. And yeah, ripe stars, that story definitely took a 180-degree turn from one moment to the other. I really would not have expected that, but then again, if you just see a neighbor that always behaves in some sort of a crazy way, at some point the pot might boil over, if that is how you would say it. Either way, if you enjoy the stories about crazy neighbors, then I would really appreciate it if you could like the video if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much in advance, your support is very much appreciated and it helps me tremendously. The next one is titled, "Entitled Neighbor Expected His Utility Bill to be Paid." This was late 1990s in rural South Carolina, rather important context. My relative Natalie is an all-out lesbian. Indeed, she and her partner Sherry were in discussion to be the plaintiffs in a legal case seeking to overturn bans on same-sex marriage. Sherry got a job as a high-powered engineer for a major international company and moved to South Carolina. Wanting to live in a more rural area, Sherry and Natalie found a home that was converted barn-sitting on about 8 acres complete with pool, private lake, small fruit orchard and some open fields. As the property had some electrical drops in various parts of the property, the sellers let Sherry know that there were actually 3 electric meters for the property, each built separately. The main house was on one and there was a hookup on a light pole in the orchard. And there was one more for a well on the property. So go figure. The 2 meters that were not the main house were cheap, so Sherry and Natalie didn't give it much thought. After they were living there a few months, Natalie mentioned that the electrical bill for the well pump went way up. Nothing outrageous, but from like $6 per month to nearly $40. Curious, I did some back-of-the-napkin calculations and found that 1/4 of the horsepower pump would have needed to run 24/7 for about 25 days straight to use that much electricity. It was just the 2 of them living there and there was no way they could have used that much water. Something was not right. And so I began a bit of investigation looking for a leak. I followed the water line out of the house and oddly, it ran off away from the well out in the field. I followed the line back into the edge of the woods and behind the barn and found, much to everyone's surprise, another well with its own pump powered from the main house. So what the hell was this other pump in the field for? And so I started digging. Surprisingly, that well ran to the neighbor's house and that is when we finally got the full story. The neighbor was the pastor at the church where the former homeowners attended. They had an arrangement that the former homeowner let the pastor get his water from the well on the farm property and the former homeowner just paid the bill. But somehow there had been an electrical fault to the ground. I don't really understand electrical stuff much, to be honest, and the meter was spinning almost non-stop and that is why the bill spiked. So Sherry, not wanting to rock the boat, offered the pastor a continued use of the well if he would fix the electrical issue and get the meter into his name. However, he refused. He insisted that he had a right to free well water at Sherry's expense and got rather unpleasant about it.
This was what God wanted.
And similar proclamations were hurled Sherry's way. Fine. Her pump. Sherry gave him a couple weeks notice and disconnected the electrical meter. No pump, no water, no longer her problem. Rather than agreeing to reimburse Sherry maybe $80 in excess bills over a couple months, paying to get the pump fixed and taking over the rather modest bill we saw, a well drilling rig at the pastor's house a few days later. It must have been thousands of dollars. To cap it all off, Natalie talked Sherry into doing something else with that well. They did fix the pump, ran a new water line, and built a bathroom with showers, all for their new, women-only lesbian campground. The campground did not last particularly long as a business, it mostly just covered some basic expense for a few large events each summer. But if not for the pastor's obstinance, it might have never existed at all. And the next one is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to give a mother and her baby candy? This Halloween I thought I would buy candy for the holiday. I don't ever have candy, but this year I decided to do it. I gave candy to the kids and even the teens watching them if they were in costume. There was one lady and her infant that I refused because it is obvious the candy would be for the mom. The baby obviously cannot understand anything, nor can he handle solids. I don't want to give free candy to a grown woman, that might make me the a-hole with just that. I don't know my neighbors, but apparently she is on my street and she is very upset. I told some friends and they think I was being an ass. I am told that it is normal for parents to bring their babies, and considering I have a lot of candy left over, it shouldn't be a big deal. If this is true, then my morals don't match with this holiday. I thought the point was giving kids free candy and seeing cute costumes. Update. Alright, Reddit thinks this was an ass move. This was my first Halloween giving out candy, so I had expectations of what I wanted Halloween to be. I participated in Halloween for selfish reasons, so I am not surprised I didn't plan for this. It was a gut reaction to what I believed was an odd situation. The baby was young, maximum 2 months, and in a normal Disney onesie, so not really a costume. I am not meant to understand everything, so I will consider this a cultural thing. The night went great other than this situation. Days have passed and I heard nothing from other neighbors or the mother, so that is how it ends. I cannot wait for the next year. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would love to hear from you. Do you think that OP is the a-hole in the story for not giving the mother candy or not? Please let us know what you think in the comments. And a user in the comments said, "You are the a-hole. Is it going to kill you to give out that one mini Snickers to make someone happy? Halloween should be fun. Kids dressed up in good costume equals candy. Kid too shy to say trick or treat, candy. Teenager trying to hold on to their fleeting youth, candy. Parent going out with a baby, candy. Random stranger walking down the street, not actually trick or treating, candy." Another user agreed, "You are the a-hole. Lots of parents take their infants trick-or-treating. I understand your logic given the baby is unable to eat solids, but handing out a treat would not have killed you either." And another user said, "Ah yes, gatekeeping Halloween. You are the a-hole. Would it kill you to give a piece of candy to one person trick-or-treating with their infant? It's not going to start an avalanche of parents showing up at your door. Many parents take their babies out for their first Halloween to trick-or-treat. Personally, I would have just admired the cute baby, threw some candy in the bag/bucket and moved on with my life. It's not a hill I'm going to choose to die on." Oh, and I guess you've never heard of the parental Halloween tax. Many parents have taken a few pieces of candy from their kids' bags anyway, so you are still giving some of your candy to adults. My son is not a big fan of Kit Kats and peanut butter cups. He will eat them, but they are not his first choice, so guess what I get to eat. And Ripe Stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.